Hey everyone, welcome to a playoff edition of the Bolt City Podcast. Dave Pele, Josh Pele, and Mario Heron. Mario will join the show in just a little bit, but we'll start it right now with our guests. Of course, as he says, we only call them in bad situations, and that's because they always after a Charger loss. That's Fernando Ramirez from the Sporting Tribune. Fernando, again, thank you for joining us. We're extremely excited as the postseason starts for the Chargers. Los Angeles travels to Jacksonville. Saturday night will be the game. And I got to ask you the very first question because this was such a hot topic, not only on this show, but nationwide, as far as Sunday strategy against the Broncos and the way Brandon Staley decided to use his roster. What was your overall feeling?
I did question it. To me, it was, well, thank you again for having me on. Always fun to jump on with you guys. I questioned it just because of the simple fact that that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have been hurt most of the part of the season. You've been able to survive without both of them. And in the last game of the season, you go in there and you try and play. And Keenan played well into the fourth quarter, which I know he wasn't playing as much and he would go in there and stuff, but you don't want these guys playing as much as what they played them. But I understood where Brandon came in. Hey, we need momentum. We need this, we need that. But those two guys, I just wouldn't have risked them because without those two guys, I mean, it does get hard for your offensive play. So I understood the strategy, but I guess damned if you do, damned if you don't. They would have gone into Jacksonville. If none of those guys would have played, they wouldn't have gone in cold. Then people would have said, "Oh, well, you should have played them last week." And they played them, and now you're hurt. So I guess it's kind of a two-edged sword. But at the same time, I wouldn't have risked after that second touchdown against the Denver Broncos. I would have sat most of those guys, especially Justin Herbert, because he took a shot right before halftime. It was a WWE style spear where the guy just comes up, hits him right in the ribs, and drops him. And you're kind of like, oh, you don't want Justin taking those kinds of hits. So, but yeah, I completely understand the frustration that fans had, especially because it's not going to be an easy game this weekend against Jacksonville, and you know that. And you could have you already knew you had the fifth seed secured. So I understand the frustration from Charger fans and kind of how the rest of the media world or the NFL world was baffled with what Brandon Staley was doing.
Yeah, obviously the big story was Mike Williams going out with a back spasms is what we found out later. He's listed as day-to-day. Rashawn Slater also gets elevated to practicing this week. He's not going to play against the Jaguars, but if they win, they say he's going to be an option versus the Chiefs. You kind of called that, Fernando, when we asked you a few weeks ago about Rashawn Slater. Do you have any other updates on Rashawn, Joey Bosa even, or Mike Williams?
So Mike Williams, Brandon Staley said that he will be practicing at some point this week, and that even if he wouldn't practice, that he will play in the game. So according to them, he is going to play in the game. Keenan Allen told us today, he's like, y'all know the difference between Mike playing and Mike not playing. We need him out there. We need him to ball. We need him to be our guy. And so it sounds like he today or on Tuesday, he was not going to practice. He wasn't going to go through the walkthrough. He was going to get medical. He was going to get obviously what he needed to do with the trainers and everything. But it sounds like he's going to be good. With Joey Bosa, they said he's going to be listed on the sheet like Justin Herbert was last week. Justin Herbert had a left shoulder, but he practiced the whole week. Same thing with Joey Bosa. It'll say groin, but he's going to practice the whole week. According to Brandon, they thought that Joey had done enough in the game. He had a sack, and then I think he had two pressures and a quarterback hit but right before halftime. So that's when they decided to yank him. Well, obviously, and Joey came off kind of like, hey, I know he came off a little bit limping, but they said that Joey's fine, that he's good to go. Kenneth Murray also should practice this week, and they said that he should be good to go for Saturday as well. So it sounds like, in a sense, they're pretty healthy now. The only thing is how much Mike Williams is going to be able to give him. We're not going to know until the game, but they sound, the way the team sounds, the way the players sound, the way Brandon Staley sounds, it's all trending positive for Mike Williams heading into Saturday's game.
Speaking of that, so here you have how healthy this team is, and a lot of teams usually aren't as healthy as what really the Chargers are heading into the postseason.
Yeah,
and it's not just
even Jacksonville's not. Jacksonville lost their left tackle, they lost their nose tackle, so I mean they've even lost some players.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I was going to say, because if you look at all these teams that are remaining in the playoffs, is that they are banged up. And I know the average fan says, well, is the quarterback healthy? Is the running back that everybody knows their names? Basically, people don't deep dive into these rosters. And so let's be honest. The Chargers' one blowout loss this year was game 3 against Jacksonville. Well, it was after the Chiefs game where all of a sudden Justin Herbert has the broken ribs. And the talk on this show was, do you even play Justin Herbert in that game? You lose by 28 points in that game, the only time they were blown out. But really, it might have been the game that the Chargers were most injured. And it might have been the game at the same time that gave Jacksonville a little bit of confidence of saying, you know what, this could be a different team. Because remember, at the time, Jacksonville hadn't won a road game in years. All of a sudden, they go 3,000 miles and they win a game in LA. So if you're Jacksonville, just trying to wear the Jacksonville hat, if you're Jacksonville and you're thinking, we're going to play the Chargers again for a second time in a season, are you thinking that's the team we're going to see, the team that we whipped up on in September, or completely a different team? How do you sell that? How do you get ready for a Charger team if you're Jacksonville?
I'd be concerned if I'm Jacksonville a little bit, just because their offense didn't look very good against the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans were getting pressure. They were pressuring Trevor Lawrence. They were getting in his face. And I feel like that's kind of what the Chargers are going to try and do. They're going to try and bring in Derwin, Bryce Callahan off the corner, Jazir Taylor. They're going to try and do different kinds of blitzes. They're going to throw different things, I think, at Trevor Lawrence. Last time James Robinson had over 100 yards rushing, he had that 50-yard run on 4th and 1 at the 50-yard line where he just took off. He's not with the team anymore. Travis Etienne. So obviously Etienne is very athletic. He's very good. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they use him. But the defense as well. I mean, you're going to have to attack a different Chargers team because Keenan Allen didn't play that game. Corey Linsley didn't play in that game either. And obviously Rashawn Slater left. Joey Bosa left the game. Well, Rashawn Slater left more towards the end of the game. But it is a different Chargers team. They've kind of gotten on a hot streak. They got on that hot streak at one point, and I think they figured some things out on defense and on offense about themselves. So I think they're going to be a lot tougher to play. If I'm Jacksonville, I am a little bit concerned because, I mean, it's hard to beat a team twice, especially when they're not in your division. So it is going to be tough to try and beat them a second time, and especially because the Chargers have seen them when they were really good, and they've also kind of had this video of how they've been these last few weeks. But Trevor's played really well. You're gonna have to kind of lean on him a little bit, but if I'm Jacksonville, I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is gonna be a completely different team. I may look at some things that they did in week 3, but other than that, this is a completely different team, especially when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are on the field, and the way this offense has been playing as of late, it is going to be a completely different team, in my opinion.
The biggest challenge for the Chargers is going to be stopping the run. In my opinion, we haven't done it well the whole season. Travis Etienne has looked pretty good second half of the year. The interesting thing to me is this game is a night game on Saturday. Everybody wants to see Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert. If you just think about these two quarterbacks, you would say Justin Herbert's the far better quarterback, right? Everybody talks about Justin Herbert as a top-tier player in the league. They actually have very similar stats. Both guys have 25 touchdowns. Herbert has a lot more yards, but he has 2 more interceptions and a lot more pass attempts. Are you interested to watch that matchup of Justin Herbert versus Trevor Lawrence? And do you also think it's fair to judge quarterbacks on wins and losses?
I mean, and you know, it's funny. Brandon was asked that same thing today, and he's like, "Well, they're the featured featured player." So I guess you judge them on wins and losses, but also I guess it kind of has to go on the playmakers that they have out on the field. But yeah, no, this is definitely the match. I mean, if you look at every other wild card matchup, it kind of looks boring in comparison to this matchup. I mean, this is literally 2 young guns coming in here. One guy that Justin Herbert hasn't gotten in the playoffs yet, and you kind of wanted to see it. And now Jacksonville, a team who a lot of people didn't expect for them. Everybody thought it was going to be the Colts versus the Titans to get in here. Jacksonville over. The only thing with me is that I think Jacksonville's a year too early. But just because you're a year too early doesn't mean that you can't make any noise. But I think you're right. I think there's 2 things that are playing against the Chargers. Can they stop the run, and can they beat themselves from beating themselves, I guess, in a sense? Like, can they stop themselves from beating themselves? That's all obviously a huge thing too. They have to be able to finish drives. They have to be able to score touchdowns. You can't get in your head. You can't drop interceptions. They have to really be disciplined this weekend, because Jacksonville's coached by a Super Bowl winning head coach who's done it before. And then another thing is they're going to have to watch the trick plays. I think there's going to be quite a few amount of trick plays, especially with the way Doug Peterson is. And they're going to have to be able to defend it well. But yeah, the run is going to be something tough, especially because, like you said, Etienne's been hot. So the Chargers are going to have to stay disciplined. Again, another thing too, from that first game to now, Braden Fayoko wasn't in there. Morgan Fox wasn't playing as much. And obviously, Sebastian Joseph Day. Now they've kind of built a wall, and they've done better against the run. I mean, obviously, against the Broncos, they didn't do it that well. But other than that Broncos game, they've done it really well, stopping the run. So I think that'll help. And then obviously, having Joey and Khalil on the edge is going to help them stop the run a little bit better as well. But definitely, if they can stop the run and not beat themselves, I really do think that this is going to be a very good, a very exciting game to watch, especially with Justin and Trevor lighting it up.
Fernando, last show we had a little bit of a discussion about which quarterback would you rather have? Would you rather have a Justin Herbert, rather have a Trevor Lawrence? Obviously, doing this show, we're all fans of Justin Herbert. We watch him up close, but at the same time, we've watched Trevor Lawrence up close too. He became, extremely popular as a freshman in college, and we watched him win a national championship, and we saw him be the #1 pick. We know his storyline. He's surrounded now with a little bit more talent than what he had his first year, and a better coach and everything else. But nationwide, what do you think that answer would be? Do you think people would take Justin Herbert, or do you think they would take Trevor Lawrence as far as a young quarterback for the next 10 years?
I think right now, I think they would still take Justin Herbert just because everybody knows that Justin Herbert is obviously, Trevor Lawrence stayed healthy as well, but you've seen more of a sample size of Justin Herbert in the NFL. You haven't really seen it as much with Trevor because last year they were terrible, even though Trevor was okay. But I think last year Trevor didn't put up the numbers that Justin put up his rookie year. So there would be kind of like people are going to look at the numbers. And I think we've kind of come into that era where now everybody looks at numbers more than they do footwork and play style and the players around them. So I think some people would say, oh, Justin's so better. But I think I'm with you guys. I think Trevor is an up and coming guy. I think he really is going to be a good quarterback for the next few years. But but times like these are going to be interesting. Which quarterback can handle the pressure? It's the pressure of the playoffs. And I mean, Trevor handled the pressure well last week, but this week it turns into a different monster. And then for the Chargers on Justin Herbert, you're going to be on the road if you happen to make it all the way, you're going to be on the road. So your back's going to be against the wall. So what are you going to do this weekend now that your back is against the wall? You're going to have those loud Jacksonville Jaguar fans. So both of them are going to be tested, but it's really, I think right now, Justin Herbert still, people would lean more toward Justin Herbert, but if Trevor Lawrence keeps on shining the way he did in the back end of the season, I think he's going to catch up pretty quickly. But I would still go Justin Herbert as more the national guy that everybody likes.
What's your prediction for this game, Fernando? How do you see it playing out? I think it's going to be low scoring. The Chargers have only scored 30 points 3 times this year. I don't see them scoring 30 points on Saturday. Excuse me. What do you think the score prediction is going into this one?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna go 23-20 Chargers. I think the Chargers will pull it out. I just think that you have some hungry players on this. Like Keenan Allen, we were talking about it today, and he was asked, "Hey, what do you tell the younger guys that are just happy to be in the playoffs and maybe they're just happy to be here and they really don't know what way is up yet?" And he goes, I've been in the league for 10 years and this is only my 3rd time making it. It's not guaranteed. He's like, you have to go out there and you have to play hard. You have to play disciplined. And he's like, so I'm counting on my brothers to go out there and to treat it just like another game. It does mean a lot more, but it's just another game. Go out there and play hard. So definitely, I think that the Chargers I think the Chargers will get this win and then set up everybody wants to watch next week. I mean, if it's Kansas City Chargers, that one really glues your eyes to the TV set, and you're gonna be like, okay, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Now let's see what these two teams have going at it. So I think this is setting up for a Kansas City Chargers matchup, which I wouldn't be mad if it was Jacksonville and Kansas City, but I just think this Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes matchup is just too much. It's like T.O. said, get your popcorn ready. I think this would really fire up a lot of NFL fans getting to watch that in the second round of the playoffs.
Fernando, one last thing real quick. Is there one team in the AFC that scares you as far as a Charger matchup? Is there anyone in the AFC playoffs that you go, man, that's not a matchup that benefits the Los Angeles Chargers?
I think the Bengals. I think the Bengals just because It's not, and it's not the. It's funny. They've lost their right tackle, they've lost their right guard, so they're going to be interesting to watch moving forward. But at the same time, Joe Burrow is just for some reason he's a magician escaping. And I mean, I guess it's because he played Home Alone when he was a little kid. He looks exactly like Macaulay Culkin, so he escapes that press. Like I was watching video of him, and he literally, it's like in dodgeball, duck, dive, duck, dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge. Like he's literally doing everything to get out of the way. So he's impressive, but I just think Jamar Chase would come. I don't know if the secondary could handle a Jamar Chase. I don't know if, I just don't know if they can handle that. And then the pressure that the Bengals defense throws at you, that would be interesting to watch as well. But I think Cincinnati would be the toughest matchup for the Chargers, just because of that. I would have said Buffalo if they had Von Miller, but without Von Miller, I think Buffalo's defense kind of gone a peg down. But I'd say Cincinnati be the toughest matchup for the Chargers.
Yeah, the three of us agree. We said the same thing. I don't know what's worse, losing to a guy like Joe Burrow, who everyone thinks, man, we should be able to contain this guy, and you can't. Or the fact that after the game was over, he wears a pure white turtleneck on the way out at the stadium, and you're like, we lost to a guy wearing a white turtleneck. Really?
But you know what? What that guy says is like when he said like, "Oh, things have changed. Like our mentality now, Super Bowl every year." I'm like, see, that's the kind of mentality you have to have. I mean, his mentality. Some people are like, "Oh, he's cocky." I'm like, no, he's sure of himself. He knows the talent that he has, and he knows the talent that the team has, and he's just confident in their ability. So, man, that team's gonna be tough to deal with for years to come. But isn't it funny that Stenton is like, if right now Stenton is older than most of the quarterbacks in the AFC right now, like in the AFC playoffs, the quarterback from Georgia.
He's old. Yeah, don't even get me started, Fernando, about this. The dude is older than like all the young
Hurts.
Yeah,
Lamar
like
Jackson,
Justin
Herbert.
He's only older than Patrick. Only Patrick Mahomes is older than him. Everybody else, he's older than everybody else.
When he was a freshman in high school, his teammates were in 4th grade at Georgia. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
it doesn't.
He was supposed to graduate high school in 2016. It doesn't make any sense, Fernando.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't give me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. No, that's nuts.
He's older than.
And you have there's a kid at Oregon that's about that he just got his 8th and 9th year of eligibility at Oregon. So that's crazy. That's crazy. You're gonna make a living. You're gonna make a living being a college student for the rest of your life. It's hilarious. It's like in the Hangover when they ask Alan, "What are you?" and then he's like, "Oh, I'm a stay-at-home son." Like it's literally your coaching for life.
Fernando, man, appreciate your time. Hopefully we're talking to you soon as you're on your way to Kansas City and see the big Charger matchup against the Chiefs, but we really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Have a great weekend, and definitely going to be exciting matchup this weekend. I think. Oh, what do you guys? Who you guys got? Cowboys or Bucks? I've been asking everybody.
Buccaneers.
I'm going Bucks. Yeah, I'm going Tom Brady. Yeah. I can't go against Tom Brady,
especially with what Washington did to Dallas last week. Oh my God, that was terrible. That was terrible. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Again, that's Fernando Ramirez. Sporting Tribune does a fantastic job. Of course, joining us does a fantastic job. And it is day to day. And man, for a guy who's fought the traffic and, of course, the rain that everyone's aware of in Southern California, really appreciate him coming on. Boy, I tell you what, real quick about as we wait for Mara to rejoin the show. You know, Josh, when you look at Joe Burrow and the quarterback that he is, I mean, the fact that he had that journey, of course, from being from Ohio to Ohio State to he's not the guy at Ohio State, so he goes to LSU and maybe part of the greatest college team of all time to, going into Cincinnati, which, let's be honest, Cincinnati has that reputation of being one of the worst organizations in all the NFL. And now he's at the point of his career where literally he could walk into the stadium holding the victory cigar. Like he is that confident and that sure that I'm about to kick your rear end in the next 3 hours, and I'm gonna walk out and smoke this cigar in my car on the way home. It is crazy how good that kid has turned out to be, and you just tip your hat to him. I mean, I have nothing else to say except he is absolutely amazing. And you can say whatever you want, all the weapons he has around him, you still have to make the throws, you still have to make the plays.
Yeah, he's the most closest thing to Michael Jordan since Kobe. I think that just the way he handles himself, he's so sure of himself. He's something cool about him. I don't know what it is. He never talks, they say, in the locker room. He just does his thing, and he's great. I mean, he's a top 3 quarterback. He's the closest thing to Justin Herbert in that draft class. So I don't want him to win. I want Justin Herbert to win, but I do admire Joe Burrow. The path he's taken is amazing.
Especially, too, when he had that quote this past week where he was like, as long as I'm here, we're a threat. We're a threat for the title. We're a threat for playoff run, which is – it's so sick to say that and that actually be true. Like, anyone can say that, but it matters that's true. I think it's cool even that a lot of people thought it was a huge risk that they took Jamar Chase with the first-round pick, 7-0 lineman, and then you realize how much that paid off, and then a lot of teams are trying to copy that, and it's probably not going to work. But I think that's even more interesting. And just that whole story, that LSU team was amazing to watch, and then Burrow's been fun to watch since then. I think if you went to, like, say, like Cowboys or something, he'd be my most hated athlete of all time. But since he's out of Bengals, like a market team that hasn't done anything in their whole existence, that makes it like a lot more cooler.
And the thing that makes it cool to me is the fact that Ohio State said you aren't the guy. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Here's Ohio State, who has never had a quality NFL quarterback, and yet he wasn't the guy. He had to transfer schools and then comes back to play professional football in the state where they said, get out of this state. Beat it. You aren't good enough for us. You got to move on. Not good enough for Ohio State, but good enough for the Cincinnati Bengals to take them to a Super Bowl. But anyway, hopefully we're talking more about Joe Burrow because they're facing Justin Herbert and the Chargers down the line. So it's just interesting to kind of go that way. He's just different. So Fernando touched on a couple different things, guys. And Josh, you said something as far as the win-loss record. We have discussed on the show for most of the season, the quarterback position, how really the quarterback is the face of a franchise. It's every franchise in the NFL. But the wins and losses, does that belong on a quarterback's record? Is that too much on a quarterback's record? And to me, wins and losses are in a quarterback's record. If you're the face of the franchise and you're the one that has an opportunity to make $50 million a season, wins and losses are on you. The stat that I think isn't fair to quarterbacks, and people might disagree with me, is they always show this. How many touchdowns have you thrown and how many interceptions have you thrown? And the deal is you can throw an interception almost anywhere on the field, right? You can throw an interception just from your opponent's own end zone or from your own end zone. And at the same time, you can throw an interception in the red zone. That happens. You have 100 yards to throw an interception. It's hard to throw a touchdown pass anywhere on the field. It's a strange stat. If you look at Terry Bradshaw's numbers, who's a Hall of Famer, 4-0 in Super Bowls, you look at Joe Namath, Hall of Famer, look at their touchdowns and interceptions. They're switched upside down to the point where those guys wouldn't even be starting quarterbacks in today's NFL. So stat-wise on maybe what is too much and what isn't enough as far as quarterbacks to blame and basically patting on the back, what is fair? Like, let me ask you guys, what is fair to you on who wears this? Because one of these quarterbacks today or on Saturday is going to walk away with a loss on their playoff record, and that's what they're going to be known for until they start winning again.
I think quarterbacks are the hardest position to judge of how good you truly are because, like you said, interceptions are misleading. Interception could be thrown on a perfect pass, right? It could go right off a guy's hands and be intercepted. So it's hard to judge who's really the best. I would say believe what your eyes are seeing, okay? If you see a quarterback make good throws on third down, that's a true sign of a great quarterback. Tom Brady, people like to make fun of him for throwing the ball on slants and not deep and being protective with the football. That's just being smart. Getting the ball to your guys on third down in key situations is what makes great quarterbacks. You watch a guy like Malik Willis for the Titans, he looks lost, right? When a quarterback looks like the game's in slow motion, you can tell how great he is. That's why Justin Herbert, to me, is such a great quarterback. He never looks rattled. Trevor Lawrence lately doesn't really look rattled. He didn't play good against the Titans, but he's a guy that you believe is going to be great down the line. I would say just judge what your eyes are looking at. If you can see a quarterback that looks calm, making good throws when it matters, those are the best quarterbacks. I wouldn't really look at the numbers particularly.
Yeah, I agree with that, Josh, where it's like trust your eyes and trust what you're seeing. You can obviously tell guys that are at the next level. You can tell when you're watching Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers because they have a calmness to the pocket. They have a calmness to the game. They don't ever really look stressed. When you watch them, Aaron Rodgers does this, I think, probably, this sucks to say, probably better than any other QB in the league, but his ability to look off a safety and just snap back at the receiver on the backside is incredible. It's awesome to watch. But at the same time, I think you also got to include the stats section and look at the numbers and what they tell you. I've been a big believer, like my whole life, wins should not count against a quarterback. I will die by that just because if you do that, you can really play a dangerous game. Then, like, how good was Dan Marino really? because that's a guy that never won a Super Bowl. That was a guy, I think, what Dave, you would know, was it his second year he made it into the playoffs and then made the Super Bowl, never went back?
Never went back. Made the Super Bowl against the Niners, and honestly, Dan Marino was amazing. I mean, for me as a guy that probably didn't even understand the game as well as what I should have, I was a young little kid, believe it or not, at the time. But Dan Marino had a couple things. One is he had these tiny hands, and it was weird to see how do you throw a football, because when you're a kid, you go out and you feel a real NFL ball for the first time. And you're like, oh my God, how does anybody throw this thing more than 20 feet? The ball is so damn big, when you have little kid hands. And Dan Marino had these tiny hands, but he had such a fast release. Nobody could ever sack Dan Marino. And then he was accurate as can be. And it was a lot of fun. It was the same reason I told you I loved watching Charger football as a kid, because Dan Fouts was throwing to Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner and Wes Chandler and John Jefferson. And they put the ball in the air all the time. And Dan Marino was putting the ball in there. And you're going, man, this guy is the best I have ever seen at that point in my life. And then they go and they face Joe Montana, a complete football team in the Niners, and they just get smoked. And then you're going, well, Dan Marino, the Dolphins will be back. Well, never once were they ever back. And then you go, okay, is it fair to Dan Marino? Now, they were very good with Dan Marino. They just weren't a Super Bowl team. I think I told you guys the story of Dan Marino big time in the locker room. And not a Dan Marino fan, because he yelled at me in the locker room. But that being said, yeah, he never got back to what. And hey, you could say the same thing, Mario, about Aaron Rodgers, as you just complimented him. And Josh and I were talking about him a few hours ago. How I was saying Aaron Rodgers, when people ask me what was Aaron Rodgers like, and I'll say, man, he was probably one of the most accurate, if not the most accurate passer I've ever seen. But he was a terrible teammate. That's how I will describe Aaron Rodgers. Now, again, he won that one Super Bowl against the Steelers, but when you look at Aaron Rodgers, with his MVP awards and everything else, how would you describe his career when it's all said and done?
The best quarterback I've ever seen is Aaron Rodgers. Might be Patrick Mahomes in like one more year, but as of now, Aaron Rodgers just does things that people don't do. Throwing the ball off the back foot on a rope right over a guy's fingertips time and time again, we've never seen that. But that doesn't really matter, man, if you're a guy that people do not want to play with, period. Alan Lazard, after the game, was like, I am out now. Like, I can't get out of Green Bay fast enough. I don't like being here. I don't like playing with Aaron Rodgers. It shouldn't be like that. People flock to play with Tom Brady because he just seems like a great teammate. Ask Antonio Brown. But Aaron Rodgers is the opposite, man. People just don't want to be there. Josh Allen's likable. People want to play with him. Joe Burrow is a guy that people want to go play with. And, Patrick Mahomes, too. Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy. It just really bothers me that a guy with such talent who got drafted way later than he should have turned into kind of a jerk. He used to be my favorite player, and now he's definitely not that. It's really kind of sad the way the things have played out.
And what's funny is like how much he kind of crapped on the way Favre handled situations closer to the end of his career in Green Bay. And you're like, well, the apple doesn't far from the tree, buddy.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of dealing it the same way. And I think the other thing with Rodgers too, and I think the difference between Rodgers and Brady, and probably just Brady with other quarterbacks and just probably other situations, people normally don't like drama. Like they just don't like that. And Rodgers is drama. That's just what he is. And especially these past 2 years. So it's like, why would I want to go? And I know I crap on it a lot, but like seriously though, but what free agent would want to go to Green Bay and then I have to deal with drama all year? Why would I want to do that? Versus I can go play with Brady, who, one, I know he will do everything he can to make sure he can get everything out of me, as long as I just literally follow what he says. And he's a good leader, and he's a good guy. And sometimes with Rodgers, it felt like, hey, if you weren't a part of my group, like over here, then I'm a mean girl. You're not allowed in here. You're not allowed in my little club. That's just what it felt like it was like. You're
right.
Yeah, it was like Christian Watson drops a pass. Oh, no. Ooh, you're not at this lunch table. No, sir. Corner by yourself. Like, that's just what it felt like.
Dude, nobody can throw you under the bus and then get in the bus and drive over to you with that same bus like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he will go right to the media and tell everybody everything you did wrong. But nobody ever does that back to him. I would one time love for one of his teammates to do it back to him. Go, man, we had a great chance to beat the Lions tonight. That game was ours. We should be in the postseason. If Aaron Rodgers could read the safety and throw a decent pass, guess what? We're in the postseason against the Niners. Nobody did that to him on Sunday. But you know what? He does that to his teammates all the time. And that's that's frustrating. And that's what leads back to a guy like Justin Herbert. We get on Justin Herbert all the time. At least I do, for not being more vocal. I want to see Justin Herbert show publicly a little bit more of an ego, a take charge guy, a guy that would go to his general manager and say, I need help. Trade deadline, where are you? Go to Brandon Staley. Why are we throwing so many damn passes behind the line of scrimmage? I want to be able to air it out. Let's stretch it. But he doesn't. Everything stays in-house. And I got news. As much as I complained about it, guess what? The strength of an organization is when you do keep things in-house. We saw Tom Brady do it. Josh, he just dropped his name. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, everything's in-house. You know, if the house is on fire and the media or the fans find out about it, that means somebody inside told them that the house is on fire. And you basically, if you're going to start stabbing your teammates and your coaches in the back, you can't move forward. You can't do that till at least after the season. You can't do it during the season. And so Justin Herbert, maybe he is more mature than me to sit there and say, hey, I'm handling it the right way. This is the only way this team's going to move forward, is by me keeping my mouth shut and not letting you guys on the outside know when things aren't going the way we want them to go.
Couldn't agree more. Pittsburgh Steelers keeping Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger relatively in check. One of the most amazing things of all time. Those guys can't even imagine what that was like in that locker room. I want to jump into the awards for this season. We're going to go over a few of them, just the ones that really, people talk about the most. We'll start with MVP. Mario, you want to kick it off?
Yeah.
Yeah, so MVP, it sucks he's in our division, highest pitched voice in the NFL. Brother's been quiet all year, which is crazy. You wouldn't think so in the MVP year. But it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's just so hard to pick anyone else. I was big on Allen to go into the year. I thought Allen, it was just kind of like felt like his time, but then just this year, Josh Allen has that I hate this guy so much to even say his name, but like has that kind of like Brett Favre in him where he just throws in the spots like, you're having a good game. You don't need it to be, you don't need to zip it between three guys and like try to get that throw. That's what Josh Allen does. So I was like, I don't think it's Josh Allen. He hasn't had that remarkable year. You look at Mahomes, first in passing yards, first in QBR, first in passing touchdowns. He just, every QB stat he runs away with. So when it comes to MVP, it's more of an MVP. I mean, it's more of a QB award on this day and age. So to me, it's Patrick Mahomes. That's who it is.
I agree with Mario. I don't think it's even close, to be honest. The only person that I thought could have given him a run for his money down the stretch was Jalen, and Jalen got hurt. So I thought right when Jalen missed a few games, it became clear-cut that Patrick Mahomes is going to be the MVP.
That's funny. I literally thought when we were going to do our awards, I thought we are just focusing on Charger awards. But if we're doing full NFL, I'm in. We're good to go. I'll play the game with you guys. MVP, we're going. I'm with you guys on Patrick Mahomes on how great he's been. And I was the last one to jump on this. I think I was just rooting so hard against the Chiefs that I was doing this more with my heart than with my head. As much as I'd love to give a lot of credit to Joe Burrow starting out 0-2 and sitting there running the table basically the way they have done, and to battle back after losing a Super Bowl, which teams often do not do, Mahomes is the MVP. When you say most valuable player, most outstanding player, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, Offensive Player of the Year. I'll start this one off. This one was a little bit tough because you have usually it's the best wide receiver, best running back, right? Get Offensive Player of the Year because, like Mario said, the best quarterback usually gets MVP. So for me, it's between Josh Jacobs, the NFL leading rusher, and Justin Jefferson, the NFL leading receiver. And I had to give it to Justin Jefferson. His team made the playoffs. It seemed like whenever the Vikings were in a bad situation, he would bail them out. I can't think of another team in the NFL this year that relies on a player that's not a quarterback as much as the Vikings rely on Justin Jefferson. So he's my Offensive Player of the Year. Best receiver in the NFL, I think, right there with Devontae Adams is number 2. But Justin Jefferson for me, Offensive Player of the Year.
All right, let me go second if you don't mind, Mario.
Go ahead.
I'm going Austin Eckler. I'm going to go stay right here in Los Angeles. I'm going Austin Eckler as Offensive Player of the Year. Underrated as can be on a national basis. Austin Eckler, what he does, 107 receptions, how important he is to this Charger team with all the injuries and all the breakdowns this team has. They're in the postseason. And maybe I'm one of the few guys that would say this, and I'm trying not to sound like a homer, but I think Austin Eckler, when you talk about Offensive Player of the Year, I think it's easy to point the finger at him.
That's a good call.
Okay, Dave, it's so interesting you say that because when we were doing this, I was doing this in my prep time. I was looking at it and I'm going, how can I find an argument for like a Chargers player in any of these? Because I was just like, it's just a Chargers pod. Like, let's try and find the argument. And the only argument I really thought for any player in the team was Austin Eckler and would be for Offensive Player of the Year. And I mean, he's had an incredible year. How much he leads every other running back in receptions, receiving touchdowns, how much he's meant to his team has been nuts. Like, it's Literally, it's kept his team alive and like
Yes.
stayed healthy on top of that. Like I just couldn't get over. And I think everyone else too that's like gonna hear this and be like, "Well, that's a homer pick." The first argument's gonna be the rushing yards. That's just gonna be the first argument, and which I get it. Running back, you're supposed to, but like, it's still, if you look at his stats, it's incredible. But I was really thinking about Eckler. I want to go with Eckler, but I think back to Buffalo Bills versus Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson took over that game.
Yep.
That was insane. Every catch he made was at the most important times, most clutch moments. I don't know if we've seen that from any other position besides QB in the NFL. I felt like a pretty long time. So that's why for him, first in receptions, first in receiving yards this year, 8 touchdowns on the year. That probably should be a lot more. Justin Jefferson's my offensive player of the year.
Okay, Mario, do you want to go right back to defensive player of the year?
Yeah, so defensive player of the year. I wonder if this was a hot take. If this was something a little different. I wanted to find a guy that's really stats based. Parsons is like my guy all year, but he really fell off.
He did.
Hard.
Good.
Yeah, maybe stop playing chess with your teammates and suck the quarterback, buddy. So defensive player of the year, Myles Garrett.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good call.
Very quietly has had an incredible year.
Yeah.
Tied for second in the NFL in sacks. Tied for third in tackles for loss. Only missed one game. I think he's also top 5 in quarterback hits. I had to check PF on that, but pretty sure. So he's been a monster all year. Cleveland just had a really down year and kind of depressing year. I think it's also just with who the quarterback is. It's people don't really want to cover him, and it's kind of weird to cover him, in a way. So I get that, but he's just been constant. I'm a big Myles Garrett fan. I think the guy's an absolute beast. If you see him in any suit or tight shirt, you think this guy's Hulk. So he's my defensive player of the year. He's been a beast all year. Just has really gone under the radar.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. I mean, again, it's kind of held up to the title of having the number 1 overall pick when the Browns drafted him. He pulled the craziest move in NFL history. We ripped a guy's helmet off and then beat him with his own helmet. That was insane. Never forget that one as well.
Yeah.
It was nuts. It was crazy. Like when you think of the craziest things you've ever seen in your life in sports, that right there is right in the top 5. For me, defensive player of the year, and I wish it was Joey, but it's not. It's Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa to me is unstoppable right now. He's just absolutely insane on how good he is, and unfortunately, he's as good as what was advertised coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah, he's the best defensive player on the best defensive team. Nick Bosa is the closest thing to Myles Garrett when you just look at a freak. Like this guy's just different, right? He has the body type of like a superhero or something. He's just a freak of nature. He's hard to. I think he's going to walk away with this award because Micah Parsons, like Mario said, like what the hell happened, dude? He was once he sent that weird tweet, everything like went to hell for him, which was really strange. But Nick Bosa is my pick as well. We're gonna go coach of the year. I'll go first. This was really tough because there's 2 guys I thought are very deserving. There's actually more than 2 guys, but the 2 guys for me that I thought were really deserving was Doug Peterson because he had to take over an absolute mess that Urban Meyer left him, and then Brian Dable for the Giants, which everybody thought was going to be a bad team again this year. They make the playoffs. So my pick, I chose Doug Peterson just because he had to take over for Urban Meyer, who was the worst coach I've ever seen, even worse than Nathaniel Hackett because he was weird. Nathaniel Hackett at least was just dumb. Urban Meyer was just weird. So Doug Peterson had to clean that up, and he's my coach of the year for doing a great job with Trevor Lawrence, making him look like one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, it's funny, Josh. I'm going to go just the opposite on that one. I'm going to go Brian Dable. Brian Dable's a guy that I always thought would be a great head coach. Like he got the job and was in the right situation. I mean, he looks like the head coach of the New York Giants, right? And I remember, I think it was our very first show or second show that we did. First week of the NFL season, though, Josh and I were in New York. And before we went on to do our very first show, we were watching the Charger game and we were watching the Titans and Giants. And I said to Josh, how in the hell does the number 1 seed in the AFC from a year ago lose at home to the New York Giants? And that was Brian Dable's first game. We all know he doesn't have a franchise quarterback. And the fact that they're in the postseason and what it ended up being maybe the toughest division or most balanced division in the NFL is crazy. Has had success everywhere he's been, won a national championship. Remember, he was the offensive coordinator in that national championship game where Tua throws the ball to Devontae Smith. He gets hired by the Buffalo Bills as their offensive coordinator, works with Josh Allen, tremendous success. And then he gets the head coaching job with the Giants and has him in the postseason in his very first season. Brian Dable, for me, I'm going to give him Coach of the Year.
So hard to not go with. They will, like, especially because he had headaches in the locker room this year. Kadarius Toney was a headache. Galloway was a headache. Daniel Jones, you said it, not a franchise QB. I'm still not high on him, but he got that QB to the playoffs. He took over an organization that, if you would have told me before this year they're going to make the playoffs, I would have said you're absolutely nuts. I thought of all the coaching positions that were open, I thought he was the best coach on the market, honestly, for it. And the fact that he took that one, I was like, God, that just seems like a really good coach going to a bad situation. But somehow he like turned around and figured it out. Partially, I'd give that to the GM, who went to the same college as me, and he's technically a brother of mine. So, maybe it's just a little bit of that guy. So maybe it's that. But honestly, I would have to go over him, Pete Carroll. You lost your best offensive guy, your best defensive guy, and Bobby Wagner. Everyone thought this was the full-on tank. People kind of wondering. I was wondering why Pete Carroll would even stick around for it. He's known for kind of just dumping situations at really bad times, aka USC. So I was like, I think he's just going to go out, kind of run off to the sunset. He doesn't, stays with it, gets his team to the playoffs. My most improved player, guys, Geno Smith. Gets Geno Smith turned around. Geno Smith looks like a top quarterback in the league. He's not, but he made him look like one. He took late round draft picks, made them into very good premier players in the league. Pete Carroll, hats off to you and everything you've done. And you pulled off a highway robbery to the Denver Broncos. So that's mine.
Geno Smith is my most improved player. Runner-up would be Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff really showed how good of a quarterback he is. The surprising thing to me when I was looking up their stats was Geno actually has one more passing touchdown than Jared Goff. I thought Jared Goff threw like 1,000 touchdowns this year. It's funny that Geno had 30 and Jared had 29. But Geno Smith, for me, also the most improved player. Everybody wrote him off, but he wrote back, as Geno likes to say. Geno was the most improved player for me.
Most improved player for me is Detroit Lions running back Jamal Williams.
Okay.
It's just I didn't see it coming. I was 100% was the guy that took Swift as my running back in fantasy football, and Jamal had a crazy season. Had a crazy interview on Sunday to end the season, which was unbelievable. He was going back and forth between personalities and voices. He was the surprise for me as far as he was my guy.
What about you, Dave? You have an offensive rookie of the year?
Offensive rookie of the year is Kenneth Walker III.
Yeah. He looks like a beast, dude. Like he looks like he's getting bigger during the year. When I was watching his highlights in the last game, I'm like, is he the biggest running back besides Derrick Henry in the league? He's an absolute freak. I have Kenneth Murray. I think he's going to walk away with this. But my runner-up is Brock Purdy, undefeated. He plays in the easiest offense of all time. I think Dave could play quarterback for the 49ers and go undefeated as well. But Brock Purdy actually looks like a veteran. He looks like the game's actually slow for him. But Brock Purdy was really, really good this year. And he just didn't play enough. He didn't play enough games. Kenneth Murray, for me, is going to be rookie of the year.
Is there like a more talented receiver rookie class that like just didn't get enough this year? Like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson just didn't get enough.
Don't we say that every year, Mario? I mean, literally, we've said that every year, I think, since 2014.
Maybe Jamar Chase the exception.
Yeah, right. Though, I mean, we've said this and the reason I say 2014, that was the class where you had OBJ and you had Sammy Watkins, and it seemed like everyone had a great receiver in their draft. And it seemed like every year since then, it has been insane how good these receivers are coming out of college.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like Drake London got screwed. Like these guys should have, like, if I am a betting man. I don't know why if I was going to say if I was a betting man. Like before the season, I would have like sprinkled on all those receivers because I'm like, one of them's going to have a breakout year. One of them. And the fact that we're talking about a running back, Kenneth Walker, who won me tons of money as Michigan State running back and destroying the Michigan Wolverines. That's just crazy to me. Like, it's just nuts that these guys just did not get enough to just show what they can do. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'll start it off with Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, this is easily the biggest runaway award. I mean, it was basically given to him after week one. You're like, okay, this guy's just different than everybody else. arguably the best cornerback in the whole NFL. It's Sauce Gardner from the Jets. We saw him early. Alabama fans obviously just look over my shoulder, but we watched him at Cincinnati, and you notice how good this guy really is. He really put it on display this year with the Jets. He's probably going to be on his own island, like they like to call it, for the rest of his career. He's a freak. So Sauce Gardner, defensive rookie of the year.
And that's true. It's funny. The guy's completely outstanding. It's fine. I was thinking of Sauce Gardner today, just driving around, and we're thinking about different things as we're getting ready for the show. And I'm going, well, how many guys are like Sauce Gardner that you put in that same category? As Josh said, might be the best corner in the league. How many best corners in the league are we going to see in the postseason? Not many, right? There aren't many. I mean, so we always talk about the Revis Island, as you just said a second ago, use the phrase the island. How important are those guys? I mean, Sauce Gardner, it seems like he cuts off half the field. Deion Sanders was one of the first guys that people can remember doing it. But how important are those guys in today's football?
I would not draft a cornerback that high, dude. I just doesn't translate to wins. It's just shown over time and time again.
I think it depends where you are as an organization. So like if you have positions checked, if you have, let's say, quarterback check, young receiver check, whatever on defensively check, if you have a chance at a lockdown corner like Sauce, I think you take Sauce.
If you have a top 5 pick, you would take him. But if you have a top 5 pick, you probably have a bunch of holes, right?
You do have a bunch of, but like let's say you look out and like the Seahawks.
The Bears. Let's hear the Bears.
Oh. It's a lot of holes.
Yeah. So okay, if you're the Bears, do you go wide receiver or corner?
Wide receiver.
And they're guaranteed like a top 5 in their position in the league.
Yeah, top 5. I mean, let's take this year out of it.
It'd be receiver.
It has to be receiver.
It'd be receiver.
Receivers translate into wins, as Josh just kind of said, right?
Yeah.
The corners don't translate into wins.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, that could be one of the things that holds back a guy like Bill Belichick, who hasn't figured this out. You know, when his roster is always pitiful, that maybe he hasn't figured out that games now aren't won on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep. Yeah. My runner-up, by the way, and I got to admit when I'm wrong, is Aiden Hutchinson. He had 9.5 sacks. I thought he wasn't going to be that good watching him at Michigan. This is another guy from the Big Ten that just beats up on slow players. He's actually really good. So that Lions defense sucks, but he's actually a great player. So that's my runner-up. I think we did great on the awards. I think we're going to be right for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see who out of us gets the most right. That's what I'm most interested in.
# be nice to the Big Ten.
That is too funny. Next show, though, I would like to do the Charger postseason awards. I'd like to see what you guys think. Okay, because hell, I'm all ready to go because that's what I thought the direction we were going. But at the same time, this is an exciting week. All right, and you know, so many of you people have been very, very active as far as telling us what you think. This is exactly what we want when we do the Bolt City podcast. We want your opinion. We're all in this together. None of us are playing in the game on Saturday night against Jacksonville. We're all rooting for the same team. We want to see success. We want to see how this team goes and this organization goes from here. But I love the interaction right now that we're getting from the Charger fan base. And so I hope we keep that up. And whether that's through, you know, the podcast, through Twitter, through YouTube, please go ahead and let us know everything you think. We're reading every single one of them, including the ones that aren't so complimentary. That one guy. We see it. Yeah. Don't worry about it. You guys have anything closing you want to close with? You guys are all good?
I want to talk Jaguars next show. Let's get into the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Dave, that makes so much more sense. A little behind the scenes for the show. When you texted in our group chat, like, let's do season awards. And then, Dave, you said, like, which ones? I took that as, like, a challenge to list as many as like I could. And so I was like, God, like, I guess Dave's trying to see how freaking like smart or something. So I was like, I just started listening off. I was like, trying to be a smart ass. So I was like,
what category? I missed it. The old man missed it. I thought we were talking Chargers only. I was shocked I didn't think we'd be mentioning Sauce Gardner today, but hell, we did.
Yeah.
We're ready to go. All right, we'll go through the Charger awards on Thursday. Also, of course, I'm looking forward to our picks. You know, as far as our picks getting ready for the postseason, the spreads, because that was one of the questions as well. Mario seems excited. Either he's excited because I didn't do well, or Josh, or someone didn't do well in last week's picks, or you're excited that, hey, the spreads are going to surprise us a little bit. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to know now or wait for next show?
No, we're going to hold on. It's a tease. Okay. We're going to pay that tease off in a couple days. Okay. We come back in a couple days again, excited as we're going to be just a few days away from the Chargers playoff game again on the West Coast, Pacific time, 5:15 kickoff. Chargers, they travel to Jacksonville to take on Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. We're going to talk about that game in depth on Thursday. Again, thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the Bolt City podcast, courtesy of Odyssey. For Josh Pele, Mario Heron, I'm Dave Pele. We'll talk to you next time.